Hello, I'm Cassius. I'm the creator of NCC-1031.com. Today I'll review Star Trek Discovery Episode 9, entitled Into the Forest I Go. Let's start off with a quick episode summary. So Starfleet decides that the USS Discovery should return to friendly space. If you remember the way last week's episode ended, the Klingons are en route to the Pavo system. Of course, rather than following Starfleet's commands directly, Captain Lorca sets a battle plan in motion to defeat the Klingon sarcophagus ship, also known as the Ship of the Dead, and also find a way to defeat the cloaking technologies at the same time. Burnham and Tyler are tasked with infiltrating the Klingon vessel, and while they're there they make a surprise discovery that Admiral Cornwell is alive and on board. We're also given a glimpse at the trauma that Lieutenant Tyler has suffered at the hands of L'Rell. She's also aboard, and Tyler's PTSD is triggered as soon as he sees her. This leaves Burnham to single-handedly complete their mission. L'Rell manages to defect to the Discovery when Tyler and Cornwell beam aboard the ship. This is reminiscent of Star Trek IV, where Catherine Hicks jumps onto Captain Kirk as he's beaming aboard the Klingon ship. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Stamets is directed by the captain to complete 133 spore jumps in order to help speed up computations needed to defeat the Klingon cloaks. Of course, his mission isn't without complications, and his health takes significant risks and turns for the worse. But he finds himself surrounded by good people, including his partner, Dr. Culver, and his fellow engineer, Cadet Tilly. The 133 spore drive jumps are successful, and the crew is able to calculate where the sarcophagus ship is even when it's cloaked. After defeating General Cole and the Klingon ship, Captain Lorca asks Stamets to perform one last jump. And of course, one last anything is never a good thing. During the last jump, Captain Lorca secretly enters a mysterious destination onto his console. This leaves the Discovery stranded in an unknown place, and that's how the episode ends. We're left with a cliffhanger. Let's dive into the episode. Star Trek Discovery does things differently than any previous Star Trek. Rather than primarily episodic, Discovery uses long-form storytelling. I'm going to start with the many things about this episode that I liked. The 9th episode, Into the Forest I Go, concludes the storyline of the first chapter of Season 1. A lot happens throughout the episode, which I found to be a nice change when compared to previous episodes. We see the death of Klingon General Cole, and I'll admit that this was the first episode I felt like the character was worth even getting to know. It's probably because we finally get a Klingon that speaks English. Well, not exactly in English as he's being translated through the Universal Translator, but the end result was that I could stop focusing on the slow-paced Klingon language and subtitles and start focusing on the facial expressions of General Cole. Admiral Cornwell gets rescued by Specialist Burnham and Lieutenant Tyler, and we get some insight into what Lieutenant Tyler has been secretly going through and what he has suffered at the hands of the Klingons. We see the incredible strain, both physical and psychological, that's placed on Lieutenant Stamets, and that it's finally out in the open after Cadet Tilly, being Cadet Tilly, lets the secret slip, and Stamets performs over 130 spore jump drives. We also get what could be the turning point, or possibly even the end, of the Klingon War. That's a lot to happen in any episode. Readers of our Discovery news site know I've made a number of comments about how little happens in any average episode of Star Trek Discovery, so I was happy with the 9th episode. The first chapter of Season 1 comes to a breathtaking conclusion, and the second chapter, hinted at the end of the episode, offers a tantalizing new beginning. Into the Forest I Go probably had the strongest opening of any this season. Actually, all around it was a very strong episode. We have Captain Lorca fighting the Vulcan Admiral's orders about saving the planet Pavo. This to me seems much more like traditional Star Trek. I mean, a captain is supposed to want to do the right thing, but Lorca has potentially nefarious objectives. So we can't even trust that his true motive is about saving the Pavans. Nonetheless, it left me feeling hopeful for his character for the first time. That is, until the end of the episode. Episode 9 had a lot of exciting action sequences. I'll be the first to admit that Star Trek isn't really known for its action. It's more of a cerebral show where the goal is peace through diplomacy. However, I thoroughly enjoyed the action this episode. Knowing Lorca, we had to know that as soon as the spore jump drive became stable, it'd be weaponized and used in battle. Sure enough, we see the USS Discovery microjumping while fighting with Klingons. I'm not usually big on war in Star Trek, but this was an exhilarating sequence. I literally had an adrenaline rush, which took me all the way back to the first battle of the USS Defiant in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Speaking of action, it was an absolutely breathtaking scene when Burnham makes her exit from the Klingon sarcophagus ship, right in the middle of fighting with General Cole. Awesome. And the scene where we see General Cole turn around and the explosions engulf his ship, so cool. I found it visually reminiscent and possibly even more exciting than the destruction of General Chang's ship in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. Not just more exciting, but somehow more satisfying too, even if General Chang was more relatable as a character. Taf ba, taf beth. Sorry.
To be or not to be.
Okay, enough about war for now. That's not what Star Trek is about. But on the topic of General Cole, I just want to give a shout out to Kenneth Mitchell. He was brilliant in this episode. Now that he got to speak some English, we can really see the depth he brings to the character. Because of being able to speak English, I felt Cole's emotions came through much better in this episode. His intentions were much more clear, and I felt a genuine fear of the character. It turns out that Captain Lorca has been keeping a much closer eye on Lieutenant Stamets' work than anyone was led to believe. He's been piecing together data from every jump and has made some interesting discoveries. Just the kind of interesting scientific possibilities that can be used by Lorca to manipulate and enthrall Lieutenant Stamets into making 133 spore jumps. That's how many jumps are needed to acquire the necessary data they'll need in order to formulate some anti-cloaking algorithms. Into the Forest I Go comes with plenty of great dialogue. The intimate discussions between Burnham and Tyler surrounding Tyler's Klingon imprisonment and the effects that it's had on him were handled very well. The result was a standout and memorable scene. Then there's the many conversations between Dr. Culber and Lieutenant Stamets. Wilson Cruz did a great job of relaying his character's concern for Stamets while maintaining an objective and professional position. We learn how deep Culber's commitment to duty goes when he heatedly voices to Captain Lorca that Stamets must stop immediately. Of course, Lorca denies that request, and even though Culber is Stamets' loving partner, he makes a few adjustments that allow Stamets to carry on with the jumping. I felt all these scenes played out very well. Oh, and we also get Star Trek's first gay male kiss. Usually Star Trek is at the forefront of these types of issues, but on the topic of homosexuality, it's a little behind. I was a little bothered by the scene where Lorca makes a speech and refers to the crew as having been polite scientists, but are now fierce warriors. I felt like, as a viewer, I was being told that this is a good thing, as if being a warrior is somehow better than being a scientist. Nothing can be further from the truth for me, and I've always felt that was Star Trek's position too, and I think it's Starfleet's position as well. To engage in battle is certainly not why people join Starfleet, which is about peaceful exploration and humanitarian missions. But none of this means it wasn't great dialogue. Lorca needed to find a way to rally his crew to fall in line with his agenda, and this manipulation seems to do just that, even if I am a little uncomfortable with the tactic. Did I mention that we finally see the Discovery at warp? I don't know why it took 9 episodes before we got to see something that's so integral to Star Trek. We usually see the ship warping away right in the opening credits of the show. It goes without saying that the Discovery is of course capable of warp, but it's good to finally see it in action. I like Discovery's take on warp. The bending light trails has some science behind it, showing that the gravity from stars, black holes, etc. is bending the light as we pass by it. It's a nice touch. Into the Forest I Go concludes the first chapter, and then immediately introduces us to the second chapter of Star Trek Discovery's first season. Lorca once again uses his power to manipulate Stamets into volunteering to perform a final jump. Stamets makes it clear that this will be his last jump, after which he'll have Starfleet's best doctors analyze him. Lorca, as usual, has his own hidden and possibly nefarious agenda. During the last jump, we see Lorca secretly change the destination. If you pay enough attention during the last spore drive jump, we see what appears to be 2 USS Discovery vessels occupying the same space. I found this intriguing. We know that Discovery will have at least 1 Mirror Universe episode in its first season. Is that what we're seeing? Or is it a far-off location in space, or possibly even another point in time? My Vulcan ears are tingling. To finish off the episode, the camera pulls out, way out, revealing a large debris field of unknown objects, likely destroyed ships. I tried freeze framing and enhancing in Photoshop a number of times, but got nothing. Into the Forest I Go proves that with Star Trek Discovery, we can have good Star Trek episodes that have action and still have the thought-provoking dialoguing situations that Trek is known for. I hope to see more of both when the season returns on January the 7th in 2018.